Greetings, everyone. This is Hao Yang from Media Research. Today, I'm going to introduce our recent project related to standard cell legalization. The title is Mixed Cell Head Legalization on CPU, GPU Heterogeneous Systems. This talk is divided into 4 parts. The first part is introduction, where I will talk about the background of standard cell legalization and placement. I will introduce the details of our heterogeneous legalization algorithm in the next part, and I will show the experimental results on public benchmarks with our method. Finally, I will summarize the talk and talk about future work. Let's start from introduction. Placement is an important step in chip implementation flow, which assigns exact locations for various circuit components, mostly our standard cells. Usually, placement is performed towards multiple objectives, including estimated variance, timing, congestion, and power. The whole placement flow can be categorized into 3 steps: global placement, legalization, and detailed placement. Legalization is covered in this talk. Basically, global placement spreads standard cells in the dead area while optimizing some objectives. However, the spread cells are likely violating design constraints. Legalization is then performed to make fine-grained adjustment to satisfy these design constraints. This paper focuses on legalization problems where standard cells have different heights. Given the global placement result of cells, we want to get the legalized cell locations such that there are no overlapped cells. All the cells are lined with layout power lines, and all cells entirely placed within assigned fences. To also preserve the global placement quality while performing the legalization, we adopt the following metric to measure the performance of the legalization algorithm, which is the average displacement of standard cells with respect to their global placement location. Now, let's talk about more details of our proposed heterogeneous legalization algorithm. The key idea comes with the observations. We observe large fraction of cells that can be easily legalized. Minor cells are hard to legalize and requires iterative search, lift, and replace. GPU handles massive, easily to place cells and leave few stubborn cells to CPU. The entire flow is shown in this figure. For the given global placed cells, we first sort the cell according to its size and divide them into groups. We pose hard constraints of legalization order on each group, meaning group 1 will always be done before group 2. We have solved the order of all cells inside each group. For example, if one cell is hard to place, we will done it early stage regardless its size. We will fetch a batch of cells for legalization and place them on GPU in parallel. We will use the R-tree structure to store the search window for all the cells in this batch to ensure that the search windows will never overlap with each other. We will leave unplaced cells in the batch aside. After we finish the whole group cells with GPU, we will take care of the rest of unplaced cells using CPU. And after a group is finished, we'll move on to the next group. Now we talk about 2 K-kernel functions. The first one is local region search. Before we start from the beginning, the entire area is divided into bins. We assign all the legalized cells in each bin according to their location. Such setting allows us to search local cells very fast, which means we only need to examine the cells within the bins that touches the search window. The next one is interval evaluation. Here's an example of a search window with 2 legalized cells. We will move the cell left and right to get all the possible single-row intervals. If a target cell is a multi-row cell, we will combine the available intervals in adjacent rows to formulate the 2-row interval. For each possible interval, we need to obtain the induced displacement with respect to the global placement location and pick the best one. Reflected task assignment in GPU is as follows. For local region search, We have each thread block handle one unplaced cell. Each thread within this block will search for legalized cells and check whether they are touching the search window. For the legalized cells located at the boundary of the search window, we will further refine this window accordingly. This can also be done in a row-level parallel manner. For the entire GPU legalization kernel, we will have a number of GPU blocks handle a batch of unlegalized cells. Each GPU block will perform local region search, interval evaluation, and cell legalization, all in parallel. As we mentioned before, in each batch, there will be some cells that are hard to legalize. We will leave them at the end of the group and process them by CPU. The following reasons that CPU do better job on those cells. In CPU, insertion interval candidates are handled in queue structure, such that each possible interval will be evaluated. The complicated data structure is not available on GPU. We therefore limit the max number of possible intervals. When there are no available intervals to place a cell, the CPU implementation can increase the window size and perform legalization iteratively, which is extremely costly for GPU. Next, we will show the experimental results. We evaluate our framework on SK17 contest benchmarks and also larger designs in SPD 2015 contest. MGL corresponds to the results of multi-row global legalization. MGL all includes the entire version of a decade paper with MGL and some fine-tuning techniques to further reduce the displacement and HPWL. Here, the MGL is evaluated on 8-thread CPU, while our framework is run on entry-level NVIDIA GPU, the model GTX 1660 type. We can see that when achieving similar legalization displacement and HPWL, we're able to further achieve 2x speedup compared to multi-threaded CPU implementation, which demonstrates the efficiency of our approach. We also conduct further efficiency study. The first figure shows the device runtime breakdown. We can see the entire runtime is occupied by GPU legalization, CPU legalization, and data transfer between CPU and GPU. The figure B shows that 99% of the cells can be easily legalized by GPU, as I assumed before. The figure C shows the runtime for each step of the legalization, where we can see half of the runtime is occupied on the window generation and the local region search. This gives us further opportunity to optimize our framework, such as using the optimized bin settings. Finally, we will conclude the talk. We discussed the opportunity of high-performance legalization on GPU-CPU heterogeneous platforms. We propose the heterogeneous global legalization algorithm with GPU legalization kernels, CPU global legalization, and task scheduling. The further work will include reduce the CPU-GPU communication overhead, optimize the memory usage, and smarter scheduler for concurrent CPU-GPU execution. Thank you.